Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. And if you're new here, welcome for the first time. Today I'm going to be counting down my top 20 Stephen King books from all the books that I've read from him so far. Stay tuned. Okay everyone, so I've read just over 60 Stephen King books, and this includes short story collections, novella collections and novels, and also non-fiction. And I'm going to include all of this in the list as just basically Stephen King works, and I'm going to talk about my top 20. Now I just want to make this very clear. This is my opinion. We all react to books differently, and if yours are not included here, you're welcome to let me know down in the spaces below. But be respectful, we are all different. Before we get into the top 20, I just want to give two special mentions. First of all, to Night Shift. This is a terrific collection, it's many people's favourite, and it was the first collection, it's the first collection of stories that he ever wrote. And yeah, very dark, it kind of shows the fact that he's still perfecting the craft, even though they're excellent stories. I do think some of the story collections later on are a little bit more, what's the word, just a bit more tight, a bit more well put together. Okay, my next special mention, and the reason this is a special mention is because right at the end I forgot about this book, and I forgot about The Green Mile. Now this is a collection because it was released in a set of series, and it's freaking brilliant. And if I had actually remembered it, it probably would be close to my top 10. So just bear that in mind. Very dark, very moving, very harrowing story about a man on death row, and yeah, what happens to him. And yeah, it's a very powerful story. I'm not going to say much more about it. In fact, for all of these books, I'm not going to go on and on because it's going to be a very long video otherwise. But yeah, this is a very, very powerful book, and if you have not read it yet, I highly recommend it. Okay, in 20th position we have Different Seasons. Now this is an incredibly varied collection. All the stories have kind of a different feel, different tone, different voice, and it's an excellent place to start for new Stephen King beginners. In my opinion, a lot of these stories are not really horror, but it just shows Stephen King's storytelling prowess. And there's some beautiful stories in here. I think my favourites are At Pupil, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, and of course The Body, which is actually probably my favourite, which was made into Stand By Me. And of course Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption was turned into possibly one of my favourite films of all time, The Shawshank Redemption. But this is a beautiful collection of stories. Okay, this might come as a surprise. In 19th position we have On Writing. Now this is part memoir, part masterclass on the art of writing, and it's just truly magnificent. And it also gives you beautiful glimpses into Stephen King's childhood and into his upbringing, his loves, also his alcoholism, his accident, and it's just a very special collection. Not so much a collection, sorry, just a very special book on writing. And even if you're not a writer, even if you're just a reader like myself, it's well worth the read, just to get a glimpse into Stephen King's personal life and the way he thinks and the way he acts. Okay, next up we have Misery, and this might actually appear higher up on most people's lists, but it's just a phenomenal horror story about a man, a best-selling author who has a car accident in a very remote area, and he's being nursed back to health by his #1 fan, who happens to be absolutely terrifyingly psychotic. Now what's wonderful about this book is that it's basically, the setting is very kind of focused. You're only really in this house, in this room, and it just makes it even more terrifying. And also the fact that it's realistic, it could actually happen. Okay, in 17th place we have Kujo. Now this is a very grim, very bleak, very dark book, absolutely horrifying. And what's very interesting about it is that Stephen King himself said that he can barely remember actually writing it, lost in a haze of alcohol and drugs at the time. And I think it's not only this story, it might be a number of others as well. But yeah, it's a very good book, but even for me, I found it kind of difficult to get through. And that ending, oh my word, was just wow. I'm not going to say anything more, I'm not going to give spoilers in this video, but it's just, yeah, it's a very good horror story, and a very sad story as well, about a St. Bernard who gets bit by a bat, gets rabies, and yeah, it's terrifying. Okay, next one might be a surprise for some of you, but as you know, I love my fantastical sort of fantasy, dark fantasy as well, and that is with Peter Straub, The Talisman. Now, I love this book. It's kind of part fantastical adventure, part horror, and it's about a young boy who has to go off in search of the talisman to heal his dying mother. His mother's dying of cancer, and in an alternative world, I can't remember the name of the alternative world now. I think it's called Territories. Yeah, sorry about that. But in an alternative sort of fantastical world, very dangerous world, there's a queen who is dying. So yeah, it's a fantastic story. It's thrilling, it's adventurous, it's got fantasy elements, and I really enjoy it, and that is The Talisman. In 15th place we have Dr. Sleep. Now this is also an incredibly underrated novel in my opinion, and that's possibly because when it was released, people were expecting The Shining 2. So a book that was more like The Shining, and not what we got here, Dr. Sleep. But I think this is a phenomenal horror novel. I'm not going to talk too much about the protagonist or anything in case you haven't heard about it or read The Shining. But yeah, I absolutely love the villains in this particular novel. This group of travelling vampires, they're basically disguised as like hippies or hobos, and they travel around in camper vans. And they go in search of these children that are psychic, and then they torture them, and they suck out their psychic energy, their souls, and kill them. So yeah, and the leader is this one with the top hat. Not sure if she's called the Hat or what, but it's just, yeah, it's a great horror novel. So do yourself a favour, Dr. Sleep. Okay everyone, as you probably noticed, we've changed lighting a bit because it's getting a bit darker. Moving towards winter, it's getting darker a bit earlier now, but that's okay. In 14th position we have Full Dark, No Stars. And basically this is an excellent collection. It's criminally underrated. And yeah, it's 4 novellas, and in this case is 1 short story as well, which is not as good, but I'm not really counting it. And each of the novellas is very dark and very grim in different kinds of ways. And my favourite, I enjoyed all of them, but my favourite is probably the first one, 1922. And I also enjoyed this book, this story called Big Driver, which is a revenge tale. There's rape. So yeah, for all these stories, check your trigger warnings. It's Stephen King after all. But yeah, that's Full Dark, No Stars. Okay, in 13th position we have Needful Things, Castle Rock story. And I need to stop using the word underrated, but this one definitely is. It's just a brilliant horror tale. It's about a stranger, and he comes into the small town, and he opens a shop called Needful Things. And in the shop, when you enter the shop, you can find an object that is your absolute heart's desire. And the only thing you need to do in order to obtain that object is to do a little prank on a neighbor or on someone that you know. And of course this just escalates into chaos, and the town just goes crazy. It's so much fun, and it's absolute mayhem, but this is a great story and a great character study. Okay, and next up, and this is a book that I've just recently read, and this is Stephen King Holly, 5-star written all over it. And now this is about the awesome Holly Gibney, private detective I've been kind of experiencing over the last few months, and this is her book, and she goes out to investigate in the land of COVID, in the time of COVID, which is a problem for many, not for me, But she goes out to investigate a missing person report, and she's on her own, and she finds out that there's a hell of a lot more going on than meets the eye. There's more than one missing person, but I won't go into details. All I'll tell you about this book is that it's got two of the most despicable, awful, terrifying, and yet completely unexpected villains you'll find in pretty much all of Stephen King fiction. And that's what made the book for me, to be honest, these villains. But yeah, just an awesome, more murder mystery than horror, but very dark murder mystery. And just outside of the top 10 we've got Skeleton Crew. Now this is the first collection that I ever read, and I absolutely adore it. And unlike other collections where it's a little bit uneven, I feel this one is almost perfect. I like pretty much all the stories in here. Maybe there's 2 or 3 exceptions, but yeah, for me it's just an absolutely class act. And my favourite are The Jaunt, which is absolutely freaking terrifying, a sort of a science fiction short story, and The Mist, which most of you probably know about, The Raft, and Survivor Type, which is truly disturbing. If you're going to read anything by Stephen King, a short story, and you want to be grossed out, read Survivor Type. Okay, next up we've got a book I'm very, very upset I don't own anymore, but I'm not going to go on and on about it because I'm going to find another copy, and that is Pet Sematary. Now, even Stephen King stated that this book was so dark. In fact, he didn't want to publish it at first because he just thought it crossed the line. It was too morbid, it was too dark, and he didn't want to go there. But he did, and he published it. And it is just such a wonderful story, very, very dark, but it is a study of grief. It's a study of loss, a study of love in a way as well. But yeah, it's about this family that moved into this town, this house next to this busy highway, and this highway is renowned for these trucks that come through far too quickly, far too fast, and they kill family pets. And so the kids, just above their house, the kids have built a cemetery called Pet Cemetery to bury their pets. But behind the Pet Cemetery, there's an Indian burial ground. And that's all I'm going to say, besides the fact that this family has a cat. Okay, next one is a book that's very dear to me. I read it last year and it totally blew my mind. And that is Joyland by Stephen King. This is not a horror. It's a coming-of-age murder mystery, maybe slight dark elements, but it is just a wonderful, nostalgic coming-of-age about a student who basically works in this town. He's left his girlfriend, or the other way around, and he's working in this town with a fun fair called Joyland. And it's just wonderful. It's about friendship, love, loss, and the fact that it is set in a fun fair. That's where he's working. I have a thing about fun fairs and clowns and all that. You should know that by now if you watch my channel. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. And there's so many parts that worked with me, the characters, the friendships. And yeah, it also made me think as a 50-year-old man looking back. This kind of reminded me of what it was like to be 20 again, 21. So it was a very powerful book. In 8th position we have The Institute. Now this is also a phenomenal novel. Some people call it more of a thriller, but it's very dark. And it is about the sinister institute that captures and houses these kids with special abilities and then experiments on them and uses them. I'm not going to say much more, but yeah, the villains are despicable, the owners of this institute, the people that run it, and you really feel for the kids. And now, one thing about Stephen King, he writes kids so well. And it's very clear in this book, because you really feel for them. And you feel for the characters and what happens to them. And yeah, this just builds up to a very dark ending as well. I found it very dark anyway. I haven't seen many people mention it. But yeah, what actually happens to these kids terrified the crap out of me. Horrified me. And I thought that was just worthy of a 5-star in itself. So that is The Institute. Okay, in 7th position we have The Long Walk. I used to own a copy of the Bachman books, no longer. But The Long Walk is sort of standalone. You can consider it a novel as well, because it's novel length. And yeah, it's an American dystopia, and there's a competition every year where these 16-year-old boys, 100 of them, basically walk. And it's last man standing, there's no finish line, and you get 3 warnings. It's 3 shots in the air, and the fourth time, I think it is, bang, you're out of the game permanently. It's terrifying, it's bleak, it's harrowing, but it's also a really interesting character study, because Stephen King doesn't focus so much on the onlookers and on the environment. It's all about the kids and about the relationships that they have with each other, their hopes, their dreams, all that kind of thing. And yeah, it's just a truly terrifying story. Read it. In 6th position, we're getting closer, people. We got Salems Lot by Stephen King. Now, this is just an excellent vampire novel, and just a really nasty vampire novel, the way vampires should be. And it's brilliant, and it's a very slow burn. So at the beginning you're going to get a lot of character development. They build up the town and the characters, and you get to know the town as a character in itself, as sort of a living and breathing character. And so you get very little in terms of, well, vampires until later on. There's little bits and pieces here and there, but when the shit hits a fan, the shit really hits a fan, and it does get very terrifying. There's some very creepy, scary moments, and yeah, I enjoy this book, and I love the head vampire, very cool as well. That's Salems Lot. Okay, in 5th position, we got another novel that Stephen King wrote later on in life, and it's a lot of people's favourites, and it has a right to be right up there. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful novel, and that is 11/22/63. And even if you're not a horror fan, do yourself a favour. This is just a fabulous novel. It's like a time travel adventure, a thrilling adventure. There's a little bit of politics that maybe kept it from being high on my list, but still just magical. And there's a love story in there that you don't expect that really, really works. And just the character development, and the characters are really unforgettable. Jake Epping, this English teacher, travels back in time to prevent the assassination of JFK. He's unforgettable, as well as these people that he meets along the way. Just a wonderful story. Do yourselves a favor, read this book. You won't be disappointed. Read this book. And number 4, we have The Shining. A family that is trapped in an isolated, snowed-in hotel, beyond any help, cannot have any help. And this man that is slowly, the father, that is slowly losing it. Yeah, for me this is probably the most terrifying of his novels, just from that alone. That's why it's at number 4. But it also works on a number of levels. First of all, it works on the level of the supernatural, the fact that you got these things happening in the hotel and to this boy, and then of course also the fact that they are closed in. You have this feeling of claustrophobia, and then finally you have this man breaking down. He's losing to his inner demons slowly but surely, one step at a time. And just that very idea that someone close to you, a father figure, can be a threat to your family, that in itself is terrifying. And this is also where Stephen King's alcoholism, you know, a lot of his books, he obviously reflects on that. And yeah, this is a terrifying novel for that reason alone. This man losing to his demons. And that is The Shining. Okay, in 3rd position, and this is my favourite series of all time, magical epic. And I had to choose my favourite book from the series. I couldn't choose the whole series on this list because it would just be monotonous. But I'm going with The Dark Tower, episode 3, or book 3, The Wastelands. The reason I've chosen The Wastelands is because, and there's no spoilers here, I'm going to say this very, very briefly, this is where the quartet, you need to read the book to find out what that is, this is where the quartet come together, come closer together, and head off on their journey to the Dark Tower. That's all I'm going to say about this book. And it's magical, it's weird, it's wonderful, and you meet some very interesting things, including a talking train. Blame and bang. That is The Wastelands. Okay everyone, we've just got 2 left. Can you guess what they are? If you know my channel, I'm sure you can. My number 2 favorite Stephen King book up to this point of my reading is Stephen King It. This is the first book I read, first horror book I read, all 1,000, close to 1,300 pages, which is crazy, but I did do it over a number of weeks, hiding under my bed when I was a school kid, and yeah, this is just a phenomenal read, and beautiful characters. I love the Losers Club. You got basically these 7 teenagers in a small town, and they under threat by the supernatural monster, a psychotic clown killer that takes the shape of their darkest fears. And they're under threat not just by this creature. That's what Stephen King does so well. There's school bullies, there's troubled home lives, really, really damaged home lives, and there's all these things that this Losers Club have to contend with. And he also goes back and forth between adulthood and childhood as well. But this book is just massive in scope. It's terrifying, it's magical, it's an adventure, it's a coming of age adventure, and I adore those. So do yourself a favour, read it. And in first position, wow, and this is just a huge, epic, post-apocalyptic, and I'm choosing this version on purpose. I got another version because this is the book that I've had the longest. It's held in together with tape, and I love it. And this is just a post-apocalyptic adventure of good versus evil. And yeah, virus wipes out most of mankind, some going to good, some going to evil. But what is most special about this book to me is the characters, the character development. And out of every book that I've read by Stephen King, and there's only one book that compares to this in terms of character development, and that's not on this video. But I remember those characters: Fran, Stu, even the dog Kujo. I remember all of these characters, and they are special. And you either love them, you hate them. Sometimes they're tragic characters, like Harold Lauter. But just very, very special book in terms of characters, but also the story. I absolutely love it. And yes, it is long, and that is the biggest complaint people have, and seems to be the only complaint people have, is how long it is. But the bottom line is, I enjoyed every moment of it. I absolutely love this book. That is The Stand. Okay everyone, that's my video for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know down below what you think of my choices. What is your top 10? Give me examples of your favorite Stephen King books. And yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with you down below. But just remember, be respectful. And yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves, keep those pages turning, and cheers.